People who have been catfished. How did you catch on that you were being lied to? Story 1. About 10 years ago, I started chatting with a guy in one of the Yahoo chat rooms. Now, we'd only been chatting for a few weeks when suddenly he disappeared offline for about 2 weeks. I was so worried, but then his sister contacted me and told me he'd been in a terrible motorcycle accident. He was in ICU, but she kept in touch with me to let me know how he was. After about a month, he got back online and we talked every day. We traded pics and eventually I got on the webcam to say hi. He couldn't do the same because of some issues with his computer. We talked like this for nearly 3 years. It was around this time that I realized his sister was actually him. It didn't matter though. I was totally head over heels for him. Then one day, he just disappeared. His profile was deleted, all his accounts were gone, and I've not heard a single word from him ever since. I still have absolutely no idea who he or she really was, and it messed me up for a long time. I still think about it sometimes, and I'd do anything to know the truth. Story 2. In my sophomore year of college, my friend Carrie, male 19, met a girl named Kelly in a chat room. They talked a lot and got close. One day, Kelly revealed that her boyfriend hurts her constantly. Carrie drove to a city a few hours away to rescue her and learned that Kelly was really Kenny. Kenny tortured Carrie into giving up all his passwords and then took him out and left his body in a field. Then Kenny impersonated Carrie online for several days in an attempt to cover his tracks. He did a bad job and got caught and took his own life in jail before trial. I realize how this sounds with all the names being like KE something something Y, but it's a true story. You can Google it. It really messed me up for a while. Story 3. About 6 years ago, I found out my brother was a catfish. He had been catfishing this young man in the UK whilst being in America. He had fake pictures and a fake name, but his real phone number. The guy being catfished, well, we'll call him Lenny, would repeatedly call my brother and leave messages on our house phone. My brother and Lenny often sent each other packages of sweets. Lenny made the decision to come to America to visit since he's never been. My brother agreed. On the day Lenny arrived in Texas, my brother told him the truth but never actually met up with Lenny. Lenny tried all week trying to convince my brother to meet him, telling him he just wanted to know who he really was. My brother never showed. Lenny called religiously every day for about a month trying to get my brother back. I think he really loved him. After that, I never heard from him again. Story 4. So when I was a freshman in high school, I was big into Neopets and had a clique. I ran on the boards and we chatted offsite as well. 2 of those people were Shelby and Adam, the same age as myself, more or less, and dating. Adam had a sister, Kelsey, I think, who was also in the clique. Well, it came to pass, as internet relationships do, that Shelby and Adam broke up and Adam and I started talking or dating. Shelby gave us her blessing. We shared pics and he was a typical emo-looking kid which 14-year-old me loved. We talked on the phone only once or twice. I was very shy about it, so didn't mind the lack of voice communication. At one point, he sent me a YouTube video of him and his friends. There wasn't much talking and it was all pretty muffled and it sounded like they were all speaking German. Adam and I eventually broke up and it was after that the big reveal came. There was no Adam. Kelsey had made him up and had been posing as him all along. I asked Shelby about it and apparently she had found out when they had broken up too, but Kelsey had made a promise not to tell. Gee, thanks. Story 5. Oh boy, this is going to be a fun story. I used to be on Omegle, a chat site, a few times when I was 17 or so. Everyone asked age and gender. Most of them would disconnect when you said you were a male, so at one point I told people I was female just to be able to talk to people. Anyway, I connected to a girl and we had great time together. We chatted for 2 hours or so, I believe, before we gave each other our Skype addresses. I had to create mine in a quick hurry because I didn't have a fake girly Skype address that matched my fake name. We went on to chat almost every day just for fun, and even though I knew I was lying to her by being a girl, I still had some fun, but I felt really guilty for lying to her. I knew we couldn't meet in real life, even though we lived like really close to each other. One day, she confessed that she was lying to me about something. That thing turned out to be that she was a guy as well. Well, we kept in contact and we had a great time together. We actually met each other once. He died 2 years later though, but still, good times. Story 6. Not me, but my father-in-law. He lost his wife 7 years ago, and after a while was tired of having an empty house and no one to talk to. He tried online dating but went to a free site and got hooked. A lady who claimed she lived in Chicago started chatting him up. She was an international traveler for business. She had pics and seemed friendly. They chatted for a few weeks and then made plans to meet after she came back from business. He kept telling us some of the details about this amazing lady he met, but we don't want to be too invasive, so didn't ask a lot of questions. Luckily for him, her trip back was a holiday Thanksgiving weekend, and we all happened to be at his house. She was supposed to fly in on Saturday, and he kept going to his room in private to chat with her about the details of her trip. On Friday, he came down all sad and said she sent him a heartbreaking message. Her plane got stuck somewhere in Europe due to weather, forgot where, and while she was waiting, her purse was stolen. She had no phone, no credit cards, no ID, no tickets, etc. She needed him to send money so she could get back home, and she was scared and alone in a country she had never visited. Now, if we hadn't been there and he told me some of the details, which of course set off my alarms, he would have sent her a couple of grand just to get her back home. I explained to him the concept of catfishing, and he didn't believe me at first, so I had him ask her for some more details. How is she reaching him with no phone? She claimed she was borrowing laptops at the airport. How come she never talked on the phone? She said she gets very shy on the phone and prefers using a dating site to chat. What is the flight number so we can track it coming to the USA? She provided one, but it was bunk and not stuck due to the weather. When we called her out on it, she tried the emotional tactic and said she was shaking in sadness and betrayal that he couldn't trust her after she gave him her heart. She kept going for emotional responses but stopped responding with any attempts to get actual proof from her. We stopped responding, and a day or two later, she messaged him one last try and claimed a friend paid for a new ticket for her, but she still needed money, a lesser amount, to pay some sort of fine or she would be stuck there and could maybe go to jail. He wouldn't want her to have to go to jail, would he? Yeah, it sucked that it happened because he's a super trusting guy. Even a few weeks later, he wasn't certain that she wasn't real despite the whole family telling him it was a scam. I think he sent her money in the first part for the original ticket, and the family didn't get involved until the stolen purse part of the scam. Of course, she was most likely a he using stolen pics online. I did an image search on one of the photos, but nothing came up. Moral of the story time: if you have anyone over 50 in your life, make sure you explain to them about different types of internet scams, especially if they're into shopping, dating, meeting friends, etc. It's a whole different world than what they grew up with, and the scammers are getting very good at it. I know a few elderly that have been scammed over the phone, but the internet brings a whole new level of scamming. Story 7. I was probably 19, very bad with women, and very into role-playing on things called MUXs. Think a role-play-centric all-text MMO. So I met a girl on one of those MUXs. She was a senior in high school, and I had just graduated. We started hanging out online, which went to let's call and talk about the plots we're running, which became I love you in a couple of weeks. It was a lot of fun. We'd sit on the phone and laugh about stuff until 3 a.m., or whenever her dad would come in and tell her to hang up. Well, calls then start slowing down. Then the letters stopped getting responded to. Eventually, she just stopped talking to me altogether. About then, I started putting the pieces together, how her pictures were always like some girl in a crowd or some girl's school photos, or how all my email came back returned to sender until she gave me a new, completely different address. The signs were all there. I was just willfully ignoring them. I think there probably were some feelings on her end. My theory is that she was a lot younger than she was claiming, and I was talking a lot of nonsense about her moving to my state so we could be together. I think she got scared, or her parents found out she was talking to an older man and she cut contact. The romance seemed too directional. I liked making her laugh and making silly plans with her. She seemed to genuinely enjoy my humor and company. But again, she was telling me she was 17, and how hard is it not to laugh at 17 sometimes? So if your name is Rashni, or if you pretended to be a girl named Rashni in like 2000, no hard feelings. Thanks for laying the groundwork and making my current relationship, which has a temporary long-distance aspect, a lot easier. And whenever I think about our imaginary son, Spaghetti Bucket, I smile and wish you well. Story 8. Saw a guy, Red Fish, with a cute profile picture on Grindr, messaged him on the app but never expected a response. He replied really quickly and was really eager to chat. He sent 2 pictures of his body, but I noticed that his hands were a lot bigger in the other one. I ignored it because my penis was thinking, but then a random stranger, Catfish, messaged me on Grindr claiming to be Red Fish's friend, how they were really close and go to the same college. I responded politely, just making conversation. Red Fish then messaged me later that night asking how I found Catfish. I said he was alright, but I already knew the deal, so I just played along. I just wanted to see how long he could keep this up. I took a screenshot of the profile picture from Red Fish's account and Google image searched it, and it was on a ton of tumblers. After a few days of talking to the both of them and Red Fish basically talking about Catfish the whole time, Red Fish's account blocked me. So I messaged Catfish to say, hey, what's up with Redfish? Why did he block me? Catfish says he knows nothing about that and says he'll ask, then comes back and says Redfish won't tell him why. Right. Then I just reply, one fish, two fish, redfish, catfish. Lame, I know, but I really like Dr. Seuss. Catfish then types one mother of a story of how he's shocked that I would even think he would do that to someone, and that he would never because he's been a victim of catfishing before, to the extent of someone stalking him and having to take out a restraining order. I don't believe it for a second because Catfish is fat and not very attractive in general. Sorry if I sound judgmental. I then told him how I Googled the profile picture and he confessed to all of it. He kept making excuses about how he was tired of being on the sidelines and he just wanted to not be ignored. The whole time, he just kept making excuses for his behavior, not once feeling like he had done something wrong. Story 9. It was when I was a teenager, not too long after the birth of ICQ, a chat program. I'd met this one person in a chat room and things started to get more and more personal. Not too long after, they eventually broke down and admitted that they had been lying and that they weren't a young hot girl, but instead a man. The guy seemed really remorseful and I couldn't bring myself to tell him that I actually wasn't a young hot lesbian either. Story 10. My ex-girlfriend tried catfishing me to test me. It took me about 30 seconds of looking through the profile before I realized that the name was her name backward. The craziest thing is that she really thought it would work. That girl was bonkers. Story 11. Okay, so I actually had this happen to me recently. I was using a dating app and started talking to this girl. She had 5 photos on there, 2 of her and 3 group photos. Nothing surprising for a girl on a dating site. We agreed to grab a coffee and I arrived early and sat outside. This girl walks up to me and says, hello. Introduced herself as a girl I was meeting but did not look anything like her. Something was familiar about her, but I couldn't go and take out my phone to check, so I went ahead. We ordered coffee and I thought about making a break for it right then and there when she went in and put sugar in it, but decided to stay. We started talking and we picked up on the conversations we were having online, but after about half a cup, I had enough and it wasn't going anywhere, so I made some excuse and left. Back in my car, I opened up my phone to look at her profile again and figure out why she looked familiar. She was in the photos. She was one of the girls in the group, but she was using her friend as the main photo. Very weird. The sad part was that she wasn't terrible looking, boring though, but not as good looking as her friend. The girl was probably all kinds of crazy or something. Story 12. So I was talking to this girl, initially from Twitter. She was easily a 9 out of 10, one of the hottest girls I'd ever seen. That was my first clue, because the odds of her instantly going for an average guy like me, whom she had never met, were very slim, especially as she had a fair few followers showing interest. Eventually, there were loads of inconsistencies in the stuff she told me about herself. She was way too clingy for someone I had never met. I just put that down to me being different, i.e. not reciprocating any feelings, never even telling her how hot she was, etc. She wanted to meet with me, but I decided against it after speaking to a friend who knew her in real life, and he told me she had a long-term boyfriend despite her not having much experience with guys, according to her. I then started hearing rumors that she had 2 accounts on Facebook, and one of them, the one that added me, could be a fake or a decoy, etc. After that, I figured it was too much of a hassle to keep up with. There were so many signs to avoid her, so I cut off all contact. And well, funny enough, I read a blog post a few years later from the real girl who said that this girl had been impersonating her for the past 10 years, had been leading guys on, and etc. and went really far with her charade to the point where she seemed mentally unstable, so bullet dodged, I guess. Story 13. Met someone on OkCupid. He was moving from NYC to my city and said he was a surgeon. This was my first red flag. I wondered why a successful surgeon was on a free dating site. We chatted for 2 weeks, but he didn't want to talk on the phone. Red flag number 2. At this point, I assume he's a fake. He deleted his profile, saying he couldn't wait to meet me in 3 weeks when he was scheduled to fly in for a weekend to find a condo. I reverse searched his photo and found another profile, the same story, but it said he was moving to Phoenix. Red flag number 3. At this point, I know he's fake, but now I'm having fun making him think I'm totally hooked. He gave me bad medicine advice when I sprained my ankle, then told me he had an obsession with feet and that he would be making sure I would get daily pedicures when I quit my job and move in with him. The weekend he was supposed to fly in, his current almost former boss died, and he couldn't make it. I sent him screenshots of his other profile and told him I knew all along and had just been messing with him. Good times. Story 14. I was playing League of Legends and this guy added me after we played a game. His English was broken, but I didn't think much of it, and we started to duo together. We did really well, but strangely, he kept referring to me as a she. Again, I didn't think twice about it, and I just kept playing with him, but eventually, he started to get really creepy and told me all these things about him. We found out that there was a significant time difference between us, but he would log in at the most ridiculous times for him just to play with him and started to become a white knight. So, whenever anyone would talk trash to me, pretty normal, he would vehemently defend me and start fights with other team members, opposing players, and whatever. Shortly after that, he would start saying goodnight, BB, which I thought was bye bye. So I would say, haha, goodnight, BB, back to him. Then he'd send me hearts like the greater than sign and the number 3, and I thought we were guys being guys, so I would jokingly message that heart back to him. Eventually, he started calling me his girlfriend when he was defending me, and I realized he full on thought I was a female the entire time. I messaged him after that game and was like, dude, I'm a guy, and he went on a rampage. He started cursing me out, and by the end of it, the reason why he thought I was a female was because of my username and because I used proper grammar and spelling. Just because I didn't use proper grammar here does not mean I suck at it. Story 15. I met this Welsh girl on 4chan that was into a lot of the same bands as I was, like the same comedians as I did, and shared a lot of my political views. She was awesome, and we stayed up all night talking about anything and everything. We went on to spend a good 6 to 8 hours almost every single day, talking pretty much constantly for the next 3 months. She was amazing, funny as hell, had really interesting opinions on a lot of things, introduced me to a ton of new music and films, and was just generally a really lovely person. I was incredibly depressed at the time and had just dropped out of college the year prior due to ever-increasing anxiety and an inability to function in public. She was the only person I had ever felt genuinely comfortable talking to, and I was completely fascinated by her. I look forward to waking up every day just because I enjoyed her company. We'd stay up all night talking and watching TV shows, and I had genuinely started to fall for her. Then one night, she said goodnight and we'll talk tomorrow, like normal, and I headed off to bed. The next day, she didn't come online. A few days went by and I hadn't heard from her at all, and I started to get really worried. I started checking the news and obituaries in her town but found nothing. I went a little bit mental at this point, and I couldn't eat or sleep properly for weeks on end. I had no idea what the hell was going on. I genuinely thought I might have completely made the whole thing up and that I was seriously mentally unwell. I thought of her and what could have happened possibly every single day. The anxiety and stress this caused me actually made me physically and mentally ill. This went on for months, and I got worse and worse, eventually leading to a full-blown nervous breakdown. So, not going into details on that, but eventually I became functional again, and a few months down the line, I decided to look into her a little further to see if I could figure out what had happened and get some closure. I came across a girl on a social media site whose pictures she had stolen. From there, I began to unravel everything. I am actually doing fairly well now, and I feel a lot healthier than I have in a long, long time. It's weird, but I still think of her from time to time, and despite knowing full well it was either a guy or someone entirely different from the pictures, I still get quite sad knowing I'll never get to talk to them again. And despite it really messing me up for a long time, I'm better for it. I just hope they're doing okay too. Story 16. He claimed to be a US Marine, yet had an extravagant amount of free time to play MMORPGs. Someone here on Reddit offered to run his name through the USMC database, and, well, no surprise, he didn't exist. Well, someone by his name did, but they had been discharged in 1958 or something, whereas this guy claimed to be 21. Good old stolen valor.